Hello, everyone, and welcome back to block party number 99. And speaking of numerology, and our 99th Collective Intelligence block party. Miles was there from the beginning, as was Melissa and James and Sarah. And oh my goodness, it's like a homecoming. All right, we are continuing on with accelerated collective evolution. And our brother Dharmendra is going to give us the lowdown, and we love you, Dharmendra, brother. Great to see you. Take it away.
Good evening. I'm Dharmendra Gordon. Our life code for this evening to look into life itself and how it relates to everything we're doing here in this beautiful block party is the 27th life code. I want to make sure everybody, obviously now people are aware, but people in the future who may see this recording, if you look at the chat window, you'll see that I have a contact email for any questions regarding reading sessions, trainings, or workshops, as well as a Facebook page where you can read about up to the 44th life code, which I've written out in full on that Facebook page for anybody who's interested. And then also for us this evening, we're going to be covering life code 27, the shadow of hoarding, the genius of generosity, and the city of the one substance. And the thing I neglected to put in there, which I'll put in there now, is the theme of this code this evening is sustenance, that which sustains. All right, so what I'd like to start with is a little bit about this life code. In the original I Ching, it was called the corners of the mouth. And that was a great indicator of whether somebody's belly was full and they were happy, or whether it wasn't and they frowned. Because it wasn't. It was all about the nourishment. I mean, the mouth is a great giveaway as to whether you're getting nourished or not. It's the gate of caring in human design, and it's also called nourishment too. Those are other terms for it. What I'd like to point out some things about it, other than the obvious that are kind of interesting about this life code, is it deals with food. And in the mystical tradition, there are three kinds of food, and actually there's other foods too, but in terms of giving human beings what they need as a foundation to function and go and also learn more beyond what those three foods will supply, but what those three foods are needed for in terms of the development of a human being in the first 21 years of their life. The three types of food are food, air, and impressions. And each one of those is the basic staple that fuels those 7-year periods. So the first 7 years, which is all about physical development, physical culture, orientation toward food, orientation toward nutritional culture, and everything about being in a physical body, and it being supported by physical substances that we take into our body. And obviously food. The second 7 years is all about the development of the emotional body, and what's behind that is the second type of food, which is air, and the quality of air and the environment you live in where the air is, and whether the air is up on a mountain where it's thinner, or down near the coast where it's thicker, or whether it's clean or whether it's not clean. And also in terms of role modeling, this is where we also develop through role modeling how the kind of person we want to be in terms of gravitating toward that particular role model. We also learn breathing patterns. There's different types of breathing patterns that go along with different types of emotions. And that's unavoidable. Because as we experience is also manifested in how we breathe and how we learn how to breathe and the rhythms of our breathing. And then that's the second type of food. The third is called impressions, and by that means sensory impressions: what we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we taste, and what we touch, and also a deeper sense of discriminative awareness, which comes as kind of like the coalescence of all those different five senses, and which we base our mental operations on in evaluating our life and synthesis and analysis for all kinds of purposes in moving through life. And what's interesting about food, air, and impressions, and what's trained also in the mystical traditions, and when I say mystical traditions, I'm not talking about something airy-fairy. I'm talking about something not only that includes everything that we consider normal in life, but a super effort beyond that to start improving that life by starting to pay attention to how that life is and how we share it with others, and what ways we can refine it and become more efficient and start to develop deeper capacities for taking in life and sharing life with others, so that life becomes just a better experience altogether. Uh, and there's three things related to these. To physical development is mudras, and the practice of mudras is something that's gone on for eons. And it can also be the practice of postures and posture sequences, like in a Tai Chi and that kind of thing, but also mudras in the traditional sense, in terms of Buddhist or even Christian have mudras. All religions actually have mudras that are ways of symbolizing an intent through the physical form and holding that intent, and by virtue of holding that intent, eventually manifesting what that intent signifies through the physical body. And then mantras, which is also about training sound and breath, which are intimately linked, and what we say, and breathing, which is also part of air. It's also based on air and fueled by air in the second 7 years. And then the third one is mandalas, and creating mandalas, and looking at what mandalas have in them and why mandalas are divided into different segments, what each of those segments implies. Yeah, astrology itself is a mandala, and it's divided into different things, different segments, 12 different segments for the years. And I could go on and on about what mandalas are about, but it's a way to train the mind. It's mind training in the third 7 years. And that's just something to give you food for thought, that there's a lot more to nutrition than meets the eye and than most people talk about. And once we have those three things, then what we give our attention to after the first 21 years is kind of how we feed our essence, and ultimately in a life where where the essence is still intact and hasn't been conditioned right out of memory, or that you can be yourself, and that you've been brought up in an environment where that's possible, then you can start training attention. And attention, of course, is developed through our work ethic and the kind of work we draw in, because from 21 to 35, we develop a work ethic, and attention is the food of that. And that's all I'm going to say on that right now. Just want to give a little bit of a taste of what we're going to be working on in the breakout room tonight, once we go past this recording, and get into the really interesting stuff. So the shadow of hoarding. When I was thinking about hoarding, obviously selfishness and holding back, and billionaires and their extreme hoarding of resources to the existence of extreme poverty in so many places on the planet, and how pretty much if all the billionaires stopped hoarding, we could probably easily feed this planet and do other things beyond that. But that's kind of the collective sickness that's being held in place firmly by the how should I call it, the culture of lack and fear of not having enough and all those kind of things, and just that gone wild and gone insane to the point where hoarding has become a lifestyle for people who have unbelievably more than they need, and all their rationalizations for that, because it's the mind and mental conditioning that kind of holds that in place. And the reason and the way that that's kind of perceived, in a young child, when they first start getting toys and realizing that something that's theirs, and realizing that if the toy is removed from their presence, they don't understand the concept of time yet, and that maybe it's coming back and it's not gone forever. But that's the beginning of kind of like this thing of a child wanting their toys all around them, mine, and where that begins from. And it's a natural thing, and it's okay. And also to realize that we do need to be selfish in certain senses, because if we don't have anything to share, then what are we going to share? So in the beginning, selfishness and that development in a child eventually starts to in later life gets the right orientation, that if you want to learn something, you got to be selfish. Got to be selfish with the knowledge you take in, the time you give yourself, and the energy and the material resources that you're going to need to learn something. And that's all selfishness used in the right way. We do have to accumulate a certain amount of resources if we want to learn anything. Or if we want to survive, we have to have a certain amount of food in the fridge, and obviously in that sense, hopefully live in a place where the air is good, and we have a certain amount of air that nourishes us, and also what we choose to nourish our impressions with, what we choose to read and or see on the TV or look at on the internet, are all different kinds of food. Um, and so a certain amount of, right orientation toward hoarding is the accumulation of things to the point where it becomes serviceable to us so we can grow. Um, and then the genius of this life code is about generosity, and generosity starts from the heart in the sense of the giving of oneself. Once you're full of certain things, it's going to start overflowing you. If you have too much, the natural, not sick way of responding to that is just let it go out, go beyond you into those you love. And if you have more than that, then it goes out into those near you. And if you have more than that, it can go out, and you figure out a way to distribute that to the world to the benefit of everybody. And that includes all the different areas we were talking about, from food to knowledge to ways of doing things in the world, that you can be a role model and help people to get better at, the different kind of things that they do that can eventually evolve into a service for others of any number of different kinds. And then finally, the city, I call the one substance, i.e. the universal chi, which is a part of everything. Nothing would exist without it. It's everything rests in it, is immersed in it. It's like a fish in the water or a fish in the ocean. Whether the fish is conscious of the ocean or not, without that ocean, there would be no fish. And that is what sustains and upholds everything. And just an acknowledgement here, a great sales point for meditation is that we, being a miniature universe and everything in the universe being sustained by the universal chi, and us also, one way to start to tap into and start to feed and become part of all of that is the more you enter into meditation, the more you start to tap into functionings and substances that have specific rhythms on a micro scale that also are attuned to events on the macro scale that are sustained by this universal chi. So if you want to enter into everything, enter into yourself, because in entering into yourself, you, by virtue of doing that, you enter into the universe at the same time. And in entering into the universe and giving your attention to that, you call, just by being attentive, you call the chi to yourself. That's why anything that's real through awareness grows, and anything that's false dissolves, simply because of what I just said. You bring attention to something, the chi is immediately there. It's the quickest way to bring the chi to you, is become attentive to whatever you're doing, whatever you're feeling, whatever you're sensing, even whatever you're thinking. You will bring the chi there in that moment. So that's a little key and a little secret into the city and how the one substance is existing in us. And to learn more about the one substance and how it works through everything in existence, enter into yourself, because everything is contained therein. And the more deeply you meditate, the more you'll learn. Simply, it's not something you have to figure out. You just be silent and enter in. And all of that opens just by doing that. And by simply remembering to watch and bring attention to whatever's happening to you, uncomfortableness in your body, or incessant mental chatter, or strange emotional experiences that don't go away. So there's just a bit of a taste of what we're going to be working on this evening in the breakout room. So thank you all for listening. I'm glad that was recorded and I could put out some things about all of this life code that may not be general knowledge to most people. Okay.
All right, stopping recording.